Hi everybody, Zombie King 11 here, and thank you for joining me on this great epic lull coaster known as Gorgeous George. Hey George, you fat pig. Well, today I'm going to be doing something different. I'm going to do a dramatic reading of The Encounter of the Fat by one Sara Metz. Now, how much of this is true? Well, we all know it's true. So, this is one woman's daring encounter with one George Alexander Yared, and how she barely escapes with her life, her decency, and her innocence from the fat pig himself, who uses the internet to lure unsuspecting people to his evil, greasy clutches. With that said, let's begin the dramatic reading, shall we, of how one woman survived an encounter with the fat. I met George back in '04 when I moved back to RVA, period. Met him about 6 times because I wanted to learn how the local TV station worked, period. Found out he was an only child, was extremely sensitive, could cut a joke but couldn't take one, as evident on his show with Kevin. Was having some chick he had hung with in Vegas stalked by his hired private detective. Red flag there. Oh, Sue, we miss you. And resented it when I pulled away because some of the friends he hung out with were even more verbally abusive than he was. But my short-lived platonic friendship was short-lived. Probably about 2 months, September through October, of interaction on his TV set and off with his friends. I got my share of harassment from him about 3 times in emails. If he got on a net site and found I had a blog up someplace that he frequented, period, that I found frightening, period. I haven't communicated with the guy at all in the email or otherwise since late October '04, and didn't intend to either. Part of his problem is he is not educated. And how did you get my name? Or no, I had bumped into him. So George is highly undereducated. We all know that. He dropped out of freaking community college within the orientation of his first class. We all know what happened. He was like, what? Orientation? I'm the Mac Daddy. Woo, baby. And then shit his pants and then ran out. But, you know, we all know you, George. We all know you. The mistake of befriending this guy, strictly platonic. I had a personal ad out when I came down to Richmond to live closer to family from D.C. area once 9/11 and the sniper incident was over in 2004. I wanted to come back to a normal, semi-sane environment. Little did you know the horrors of Gorgeous George. Never even kissed this guy, but when he responded about having a TV show, since part of my background was in indie films and publishing, I let him take me out for drinks one night. We went, chatted up a storm. Once I met him, realized he was too fat for me. Didn't say that, but just said we could be friends. And I want to stay in touch due to the film/TV interest. He invited me over to watch him with Kevin. I met one of his friends, Kevin, and a few other locals in cable channel here. Laughed a bunch, mostly at Kevin poking fun at George, who was clueless to it, like he always is, and went back home after seeing him film their little show. The next day, George called and asked me if I wanted to see them film again next week. I said, sure, not knowing anyone in his county and living a good 55 minutes away. With nothing better to do, I decided to go for watching and learning, period. Did that once more again as a platonic friend, period. I also found him one night to his very, very messy house in one of the counties close by before I drove my car home, period. I think I was dropping off something. I can't recall what, but he was, and realized his house hadn't been cleaned in probably years and years, period. Then the next week, nothing better to do, went to his cable channel once again. I learned this time much more about George's personality, period, that he is controlling, that he had sex with some hooker in Vegas. She wanted money, he wanted love, period. period. She spent, I think, a week with him, period, which she banished with money for. Services, and then went incognito, of course. He freaked out in '04 and began having her followed by a private Vegas investigator. He paid the man. Period. He would talk about it to those around him about it. Period. I recall telling him that this was not the normal thing to do. That this was not fair to do. Period. He didn't care. I stupidly met with him the next week at the costume party for October 31st week at Tob.co. Once we got there, I saw that he wanted to date me, but I didn't want to date him. Period. A guy asked me to dance. He didn't like that, but I danced anyways. Period. He looked fat, way overweight in his costume. I wanted out of the situation really fast. I was 150 pounds to his 250 or more. That was probably George in his freaking Joker costume. Really classy there, George. Really classy. You have to admit creativity, though, for going as the gay Joker. Let's see. Or more. He wanted to leave. I said that I was staying. Period. He started calling me at home, and thank God he was never let to come over. Nor did I let him know the address, and was so happy my ground line was unlisted. Period. I allowed him to call once more and invite me to dinner as friends, only to meet a couple that he knew at a swanky restaurant in a private room. Period. Let's see. When I got there, I realized yet again this wouldn't work, as he told me that I couldn't tell them I was only a friend. Period. That bothered me, as I sure as hell didn't want him to think, or them to think, that I was more than a friend with him at all. Period. When I met this couple, I realized that this couple as well were totally unprofessional, undereducated. The hubby was jealous of George. The wife was smitten with George, and they both, for some bizarre reason, felt George had hit the big time because he was on cable TV channel. Period. Geez, I have managed major gigs, and I had Hollywood agents, and I knew George was small town USA, small potatoes, period. George had gotten us a private room for dinners, minus the people, as they would recognize him anyway. As no one watches his stupid show, the hubby immediately said that his wife was in love with George, and that his biggest threat as a man was that George would take away his wife. Period. I wanted to laugh, but I blurted out that he was only friends. Period. George was upset by this one, and then ran. Thank you for watching part one of my dramatic readings of Sara Metz's encounter with the fat pig George himself. Stay tuned for part two, you guys. This is Zombie King signing out. Good night.